Hi, Noah.
Hi everyone.
Welcome. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for joining Stand With Us this week. And thank you for all that you do for the state of Israel and the Jewish people. So, we're going to start with talking about your story a little bit. You grew up on a moshav, and you were born to Israeli military parents. And I know that we had talked about how you had gotten sick as a child and spent time going in and out of hospitals. So, despite these health challenges, you still fought to serve in the IDF and eventually became a combat medic commander. After your service, you began a career as a chef. You attended culinary school and you began working in bakeries, eventually, of course, becoming Miss Israel and representing your country on the global stage. So, I think let's start by you talking about what it's like to represent Israel in the international arena.
Yeah, it's a long way to become Miss Israel. But basically, I was born and raised in the most beautiful place in Israel. Really, you wake up to the sounds of birds, you walk barefoot, you grow up with horses, animals, the most beautiful place. And I remember throughout my entire childhood, my parents had such a big influence on me. My father, with his military, by the way, it's 40 years, he asked me to correct. And that was something that it was just a part of me. And then I basically, because of my disease, I had to fight to serve. So I remember myself for 6 months trying to basically convince the military to take me to a combat role. And I did that after 6 very long months. I was trying to convince them. And then I got enlisted and I was a combat medic commander. So I used to teach and taught I used to teach and taught soldiers how to be combat medic. And during my service, I trained and taught over 160 soldiers how to be combat medic. And for me, it's one of the biggest responsibilities I've ever had in my life. But then COVID came, and I actually had a breakup from my boyfriend from the military. And I remember every single day I was sitting in my bed and I was crying and I was really devastated. And my mom really wanted to cheer me up. So she decided, like any Jewish mother would, to sign me into Miss Israel without my consent or knowledge. And she thought that that would make my life so much better. So one day I wake up in the morning and I'm getting an email from Miss Israel competition that I'm invited to participate in the first audition. And I look at this email and I was a moshav girl. I'm working in a bakery. How is Miss Israel even related to me? So my mom is looking at me and she's telling me, like every Jewish mother would, you're going and I'm not asking you. And I went basically the first audition. The first audition is 3,000 girls came, and I realized that I'm going to prove my mother's wrong. There's no way I'm going to even pass the first audition. And sitting now on the stage, and I know we have a lot of college students in here, so I just want you to remember one thing. Your mom is always right. And then I realized that after I won and I became Miss Israel, we realized that the competition is going to take place in Israel. So basically, all the girls from around the world are going to come to Israel. So my responsibility is no longer to represent Israel as a country, is to host these girls that came. Basically, when they came to Israel, all of them got death threats simply for choosing to compete in a beauty pageant and to follow their dream. So I found myself being the bridge and explaining to these girls what is antisemitism and why are they getting death threats. And I remember while we were in Miss Universe competition, at the bus I would grab the mic and explain to these girls, look, you see the road signs, it's Hebrew, English, and Arabic. And there's so many things that really I felt like it's my responsibility not just to represent my country, but also to show them what the true meaning of Israel is.
Amazing. Such an inspiration. So you talked a little bit about going back to the military after October 7th, left being a beauty queen and went back to serve. And you had spoken about your friends who came to Israel for the pageant, and they had reached out to you on October 8th even and had said,
Yeah.
first, where do I get information from? And thank you so much for sending them to stand with
I
us.
think there's another option.
And also, you were there representing Israel for these friends who were checking in on you. So maybe talk to us a little bit about what it's like to be a woman in war post October 7th.
So my military service, basically on October 7th, I got a call around 11 a.m. from my commander, and he told me to come, pack as much as I can, and just come. They had no idea even for how long or what are we going to do there, because I was a commander. So who am I going to teach to be a medic now? And I remember I packed my things, and still the situation in Israel by this time, nothing was clear. So my dad drove me to my military base, and I remember he dropped me and he gave me the longest hug, and that's something that I will never forget. And then they told us that right now we're going to be trained to be combat medics again, not commanders. So we drove to the south of Israel to a base called Tzelim, and we basically did retraining of just being a combat medic again. And about 3 weeks after, we were stationed at the Gaza border. And to me, since the moment we arrived, the second there, you feel everything. And it means you have 30 seconds. If you get a call, you have to run to the ambulance. You have to run as fast as you can, because then you have a minute drive. And then when you get there, you have to treat soldiers. So our job was to treat every soldier and every person that got injured inside of Gaza. And for this, I have two things that really defined my service that were turning point for me. And the first one was actually the first time in my life treating anyone, a person, and not trying to train somebody else. The first time in my life actually seeing blood. And I remember that we got the call, we ran to the ambulance, we have 30 seconds, and we have 1 minute drive to the Gaza border. We go to the Gaza border, and then we see the soldier, and we are getting the soldier. His legs were filled with shrapnels. He was bleeding, he was crying. And I remember that I was looking at him, at his face, and we were basically doing re-establishment and just to see what his states are. And I looked into his eyes, and the one thing that I saw was that his eyes was exactly the same color as my young brother. And this soldier was 19 years old. My brother is also 19 years old. And that moment was something that for me, I can never forget, because right after I realized that we are not treating soldiers, we're treating kids. We are treating someone's son, someone's brother, someone's girlfriend, and that was something that I would never forget. And the second thing was something that I actually, when I was a commander, I used to teach other soldiers. And basically in the military, every combat medic in the IDF takes an oath to save every person's life, no matter if it's your loved one or if it's your enemy. And I remember teaching my soldiers, and we used to have these debates about how are we going to treat our enemies? How are we going to treat the people that want to harm us? But I've never even imagined that I will be in that position. And I remember the first time that I treated a Hamas terrorist. We arrived to the border. It's as if a soldier was injured, but we get to the location, and my friends were treating a soldier that was injured by a Hamas terrorist, and I was treating the Hamas terrorist that shot him. And that moment, once again, shook me to my core, because I remember teaching my soldier that, but I've never actually thought that I will be in the position. And I keep thinking to myself, at that time that I'm treating this disgusting human being, that this is the difference between us and them, because we have a heart and we are people, and this is what we are doing. And just having that and seeing that and doing that gave me so much, because I don't just get to sit here and say, hi, IDF is. I can honestly say that the IDF is the most moral military in the world. And I don't care. Whenever every single person, because I go a lot and I confront all the anti-Semites, and when they say that Israel is committing a genocide, we are so bad at committing a genocide, because why would we save our enemies? That's something that we can't even, I don't have enough words to say that. So that's in a short version of being a soldier.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing this. Um, I think this is a good transition to our last question. So, after completing your military duty, you didn't just return to your normal life. You decided to use the platform that you had built to speak out for Israel, to tell our story, to tell the story of the Jewish people. But obviously, you've been attacked both online and in person since this. And I know there's been several moments where your advocacy has put you in real danger. There's the incident of the protests where a pro-Palestinian activist shoved a protest stick in your eye, and another where a woman pulled a knife and threatened you. I've even seen that there's videos of demonstrators mocking you by crowning you Miss Genocide. Let's take a look at what this looks like.
I'm not Cochva. I am Miss Israel. Everybody knows this beauty queen goal in life is to achieve world peace. Let me tell you how this goal became my reality.
We don't want no beauty queen! We don't want no beauty queen! We want a free Palestine! We want a free Palestine! Tonight we are holding our own pageant, and we will present Miss Israel with a new, more fitting title that we have chosen.
And the nominees are Miss Genocide, Misuse of Jewish Trauma, Miscellaneous War Crimes.
Yeah. Yeah, it's okay to laugh because that was my first reaction. I was shocked by their stupidity. But to me, it wasn't even a question because I remember after being attacked and getting this protest sign in my eye, I had a black eye. And I called my dad and I was crying. And I told him, like, Dad, like, why am I doing this? And then he told me in a very Israeli way, relax. You remember your grandmother. My entire life, my grandparents were really a big part of our life. And my father, who was basically 40 years in the military, he was a pilot, he was a squadron commander, he was the commander of the Israeli flight school. And he basically did that because my grandparents were Holocaust survivors. And that was their win. But more than that, my grandmother, Nili, she survived Auschwitz with both of her sisters, Leah and Eva. Leah was the oldest sister, and she was the strongest. So they went to Auschwitz, which were the same place that they said goodbye to their mother without even realizing that that was their last time that they're going to say. And they started working, manufactured weapons to the Nazis. And one day, my grandmother got really sick. She got the typhus. And the Nazis, during a selection, decided that she is no longer deserved to work for them. And they decided to send her to the gas chambers. But in that second, Leah, her oldest sister, just stepped out of the line, started walking, Eva right after her. So both of her sisters started walking outside the line when the Nazis are instructing them and yelling at them to go back into line. But they didn't stop. Instead, they stopped, they looked into the Nazis' eyes and they said, no, if you're taking Nili, you're taking me too. And the Nazis realized that they need to keep Eva and Leah because they're very strong workers. So they said, okay, and they saved my grandmother's life. So my entire childhood and my entire life was my grandparents were actually able to look into the Nazis' eyes and say no. And they fought for my grandmother's life. And we are today in the position that every single one of us have a mic. It doesn't even have to be this mic or your Instagram. Even if you're facing one person, that's something that our ancestors, they didn't have the privilege. And we have a privilege that we can go and we can speak and we can use our voice. And that's something that none of our ancestors had. And this is why it's so important, no matter how many freaks you're going to see, you have to keep up and you have to keep pushing and you have to use your voice. And I know that's something that a lot of the college students are facing in these days, but you just have to keep that something in your mind that you have a privilege and you have a voice and you have to use that. And that's it.
Yeah. No, thank you. That's exactly what we're doing at Stand With Us. Everyone, please applaud Noah one more time. Thank you so much.